Yo, people, welcome back to the YouTube channel. You already know what time it is. It's time for another video, and it's time for what you've been waiting for, really, is a player special, especially in this position, because we are suffering. We are very much suffering, and we need some love and guidance. And I've brought on a special guest from Football Daily, and I'm so happy to have him on. Chris, big up, bro. Really honored to have you on, because like I said to you backstage, I've been watching you guys on Football Daily. You're smashing it. New set, Sam, you know, struggling with that Chelsea vibe, but like I said, I've got a soft spot for Celtic. How are you, sir? How are you, bro?
I'm very well, thank you. That was the nicest intro anyone's given me in quite some time. You know, we work the boys quite hard on Football Daily, so normally it's more like, oh, you again. So to be called special, to be welcomed with open arms, very refreshing. Thank you very much. Even if I'm on the show today because you're poaching, or looks like you may poach one of our starting players, right?
Yeah.
Well, I'm all good. But what do you want to know about the big man? And I'll fill you in.
Let's get into it, because like I said to you off stage, I've got a soft spot for Celtic, and you guys are actually really good at having... You're kind of underrated, in my opinion, in terms of players and technical players in particular. I've seen the Dembeles. I've seen even the wonder kid Dembele that came through, you know, all the way back to your Samarases, the Greek god, your Aidan McGeedy's, your Scott Browns.
Tugging at the heartstrings here. These are all my heroes.
Yeah, these were the moments I'm pulling on them for the Champions League, the AC Milan wins, the Barcelona ones, and then all the way to your Ezegiris and your Tierney's and your Van Dijks. I've always had a soft spot for Celtic, like I said, because of my stepdad being Irish, and you know, that clashes with the whole Rangers thing. But it's brilliant to see.
I already prefer you to Sam then. I already prefer you.
It's honestly brilliant to see you guys flourishing again, because when that title was taken by Gerrard, I was like, I'm not happy about this. This don't feel right. So I'm glad that you guys are smashing it in the SPL. But we are here to obviously speak on Juranovic. You had a great World Cup. He was probably top two World Cup right backs, people would say, in their team of the tournament, alongside Hakimi from Morocco. But it's time to really get into the depths of the player and see what he's like on a week-to-week basis, because I'm not watching Celtic on a weekly, and that's why, you know, it's great to get your expertise on the player and really, you know, get to grips with just how good he actually is. So taking it back to Scotland, and I guess this season, and he's obviously a big player for you guys, and you're top of the league, and you are dominating. You're clear. There is a massive gap there, and that draw that happened at a crazy kickoff time was a little bit of... It's like a grain of rice under the door for Rangers to hold on to, because it's been very easy for you this season. Just how good is he, just in general, before we get into the tactical side of it?
Yes, I wouldn't say he's absolutely crucial to Celtic. I would say he's a very good player, and I can see why his skill set would be desirable, particularly, you know, for managers in the Premier League who play possession-orientated football, like Graham Potter. You know, when Anthony Ralston has stood in, Celtic have looked fine. When Rio Hatate, one of our central midfielders, has played right back, we've looked fine. So he's one of those players I think we could get by without, and would be happy to take a decent transfer fee for. But that doesn't mean I wouldn't be disappointed to see him leave, right? He is technically very sound player, like I've mentioned, in terms of average passes made in the Champions League. I think he's probably on par with Cucurella. At least he was last time I looked. So you know that he's going to be able to contribute to play in a way that Potter expects his fullbacks to, at the highest level. I don't know how much you know about Ange Postecoglou, our new coach, but the profile of player he likes are players very comfortable on the ball, are players who are very comfortable with being fluid, tactically speaking. I know we've seen a lot of inverted fullbacks of late in the Premier League with Pep Guardiola, with Arteta. That's something that Ange Postecoglou has been insistent on wherever he's gone. And that's why we're often with Juranovic in the side, better at building out from the back, more secure in possession, more secure when the ball is turned over. He's basically... I think different to Reece James. Not many players are like Reece James.
Exactly,
yeah. He's not got the same end product as Reece James. His crossing can be a bit suspect. He can be a little bit flappy in transition, which I think was highlighted in a ruthless fashion by Julian Alvarez, Argentina against Croatia.
Yeah.
But I think he would do a solid job for you guys, and he wouldn't cost the world, right? So yeah, I think he'd be good.
The fact that you mentioned the inverted fullback thing is quite interesting, because I think now we're starting to see, especially in the Premier League, that you need different types of fullbacks. Like you're saying, you know, you've got your Tierney's versus your Zinchenko's, you've got your Walkers versus your Cancelos. It gives you something different tactically. It gives you an extra man in midfield. It gives you, you know, a little bit of maybe extra creativity from these more inverted fullbacks. And obviously, Reece James is kind of like an all-rounder, but of course, him being injury prone means most of the time we play without him. And the same side for Chilwell. And I think it's an interesting situation with this right back. Is, do we go for an inverted one, or do we go for an overlapping one? And you speak about maybe his crossing and his end product needing some work. Before the World Cup started, I guess from what you had seen this season in particular, did you foresee big clubs looking at him? Did you foresee that World Cup level of performance and hyper maybe incoming around his name, or was this kind of unexpected to you, I guess?
I think he's always performed solidly at international level, and then that performance against Brazil really brought him into the mainstream, right, where he looked like one of the three best players on the pitch. He obviously tired pretty quickly as the competition went on because of how much extra time Croatia played, and I think we saw that against Argentina. We saw him start to shy away from the ball, start to be very conscious of some of their attacking talent in Di Maria, Alvarez, Messi, which is fine. I'm not going to hold that against him. That is in many ways wise, but he looked quite meek in his final game, and then came back to play against Rangers. Had to bring him on after Greg Taylor, our left back, was injured, so we had to play him left back. And we're an interesting, like the last couple of weeks have been an interesting time for him, because his stock was really high coming off the back of the World Cup, and then he delivered a really poor performance against Rangers. Didn't enamor himself to the fans by being uncharacteristically meek. I'm going to use that word again against Rangers, because people think he was sort of being guarded in order to facilitate a move. Didn't want to get injured. Didn't want to put himself about, because you know teams are circulating like vultures. So yeah, we're in a bit of a strange time with him, in that he's not in Celtic fans' good books, but like prior to that, he's been a very consistent performer, has not looked out of place at Champions League level. And yes, he's not a sort of rampaging fullback in the same way that Reece James is. You know, we often, particularly against superior opposition, leave him as the sort of last line of defense, because he does have pretty good recovery pace. But he's obviously going to give you much more physicality than Azpilicueta. Like he is two-way, and he can get up and down. He's just not as good as Reece James, but there's about three other players that are. So I think you're getting a really well-rounded player. If you're getting him for anywhere between, I think 10 and 15 has been quoted. I don't think the sort of rumors we've heard about, you know, 6 to 8. I don't.
Yeah. What was that all about?
They're not feasible. I think Barcelona, we're trying it on a little bit. I think Monza.
Was there like a release clause or something?
No, there's not. Generally, you know, at Celtic, there isn't a release clause. That would be a very sort of special arrangement, so to speak. And we held out for 25 for Tierney. He's obviously not of that level, not of that age. I think when we sold Tierney, he was 21, 22. Juranovic is now 27. Has had an unexpected rise over the last 18 months, 2 years. He was at Legia Warsaw before. You know, we only bought him for 2.5 mil 18 months ago. So he's had a purple patch. I think he's probably smart to try and use that to facilitate a move to someone like you guys. Like that is one hell of a payday for someone that's at Legia Warsaw 18 months ago.
It's a massive rise. I guess I was also going to ask on his character, because leadership quality traits or something that, because obviously now him trying to facilitate the move, maybe you're saying maybe against Rangers starting to maybe not get on along with the fans as much. We've seen it with Enzo Fernandez as well. We've seen it, you know, many times before when these players get the opportunity to get that big move, they really do push for it. And I guess speaking on his character, obviously he said the professionalism up until this point has been really, really strong from him. Do you what kind of personality do you think he kind of brings? I guess coming into a team like Chelsea, is he kind of, you know, outspoken? Does he have any leadership qualities that you've seen in terms of organizing defenses, set pieces, that kind of stuff, or is he more of a more introvert, maybe more of a quieter character? Do you think?
I don't think he's an organizer. What he is he's quite brave in possession, which I sort of highlighted earlier with how often he was on the ball in the Champions League for Celtic. He seems like quite obviously a lively character. You know, he enjoys the celebrations. He seems like he's a popular figure in the dressing room. Ange Postecoglou, a little bit like Jurgen Klopp, very particular with not only the profile of player he wants to go after, but the person they are as well. So does his due diligence in that regard.
Yeah.
Is a guy that really likes to build a culture from the ground up, and we are reaping the sort of benefits of that now. There's very rarely, unlike the Neil Lennon era, any discontent with the players, any outspokenness in the media. He just head down, does his job. Bit of a cheeky chappy. We had a great song for him, a bit of Pitbull in there, and no one's had a bad word to say about him up until that guarded Rangers performance. But he also returned from the World Cup injured, so that might have been a factor, right? It might not have been all about trying to get a big move out of the club. It might have been he might have been conscious of an injury, and it's worth mentioning that he's taken a couple of high pressure penalties for Celtic. Couple of cheeky Panenkas in there in big European games. So he is, I'd say, mentally resilient as well.
Yeah.
And he would be missed in that regard. But I think I struggle to see him as a starter for you guys. But a good stopgap while Reece James sort of figures out his body, right?
I think it's interesting, right? Because a lot of Chelsea fans are looking at this position and thinking, do you know what? We have been spending a lot of money. Maybe this is a position where we can be a little bit more suave, a little bit more clever and cute. We saw Tsimikas move to Liverpool from Olympiacos.
Yes, I think that's a good point of comparison. He could back up James in the same way that Tsimikas backs up Robertson. Yeah.
But if Reece James was to take a long-term hit in terms of an injury and was to miss, say, a full season, the confidence levels of whether or not he'd be able to fill in and play to a first-team level, do you think at his age as well, is there gears to go, or are we seeing the peak of this player, do you think, at the moment?
Yeah, I think it'd be fair to say that we've seen his peak. That's not to say that Potter can't impart some more wisdom in him. He's obviously a very good coach. If he was going to a Chelsea side that was presided over by Jose Mourinho, I think Mourinho would expect him to be like, this is what I'm working with. Whereas Potter probably a bit more patient in that regard, or like more willing to develop a player even in the latter years. There's always space to learn, right? Yeah, he's a proper coach's coach. But I think I don't think there would be any issue with him being your first choice right back. I think the issue would come if you relied on him in the same fashion that you rely on Reece James right now for ball progression, for instilling fear into the opposition, for chance creation. I don't think he can fill those shoes. But if you get better, which I think you will under Potter, elsewhere on the pitch, and your attack becomes a little bit more coherent, I have no issues with him being dropped into your right back position, playing 25 games a season if James is injured, and doing a really solid job of it. There's players that haven't really shone at Celtic that have gone on to be perfectly passable Premier League players in the top 10, 12. And this guy is one of our better players, playing under one of our better, more progressive managers. So I think it'd be a sort of
shrewd,
calculated risk.
Risk, especially for the price that you're talking about, because like I said, there was always that talk of like 8 million, and I was wondering, where that comes from. Is there a release clause? But like you're saying, it's probably higher than that, more ranging between the 12 to 15. In terms of the way you guys play, like finally, in terms of the reliance on him, do you guys have, because we are very reliant on Reece James. Everybody can see that when he plays, we're very predominantly down the right hand side. All of our traffic goes down there, our chance creation, our build-up play, even our goals, he's chipped in with as well over the seasons as well when he's been fit. And I guess that is partly down to the fact that Chilwell's been out as well, and we had Alonso on that side maybe prior seasons, and he would be venturing further forward, maybe off the ball, making
a lopsided one.
A little bit lopsided. Do you guys have a similar situation with Juranovic? Is he really heavily involved in your build-up play, and do you go down that side, or is your team more balanced in that respect and you don't heavily rely upon him in terms of build-up play, general play, etc.?
I think the skill set of our fullbacks mirror one another quite nicely. I'd say that Greg Taylor, our left back, is probably has a higher ceiling, maybe playing at a slightly higher level week in, week out than Juranovic right now, who can be a little bit inconsistent and maybe not as prominent going forward. But it's very impressive the way you can step in, receive the ball, continue, progress, play, like I've said before, when sort of boy with the same stuff. But I don't think there's any one player with Celtic that is
heavily, because even more I was watching
is make or break regarding, right? And that's one of the biggest positives about Ange Postecoglou, is that he's made us, you know, greater than the sum of our parts. And clearly there's very like defined roles with very clear expectations. And, you know, whether, you know, midfield, whether that's, you know, we've seen Aaron Moy drop in, particularly after the World Cup, and he had a great World Cup for Australia to great effect. And, you know, Callum McGregor, our captain, who was injured and has taken a little bit of time to get going again. You know, they've kind of switched out pretty judiciously, and we've not seen massive like ramifications from that. So I think the coaching's been great to the point where like I said, the very start of the episode, no qualms him going. It's not going to be massively detrimental to Celtic, but he is one of our players who, you know, we win the league, we go straight back into the Champions League group stage next season. He will be missed at that level. Like he is, I think, between Europa League and Champions League group stage level of player. So he's someone that can handle that competition.
Step up,
that's that arena. But we've just bought Canada's starting right back, Alistair Johnson, and he was great in the Old Firm match. So it's almost like we're prepared for life.
You're almost I was going to say, it seems like you guys are kind of preparing for potentially the inevitable that maybe he does move on in a January or summer. Yeah, it's an interesting one.
I think Leicester were pretty interested last season, and we've just been preparing ever since for a Premier League bid.
So that's an interesting one. But I think with this player, it's one of those ones where, like you said, it's a calculated risk. You're never going to know really to what ceiling. I think weaknesses wise, you're highlighting chance creation, you're highlighting crossing, you're highlighting getting forward. So that mentally in my head, I'm already thinking maybe he's tucking in, he's being more inverted, he's involved in the build up, and the other side kind of it legislates for, you know, getting really high up the pitch. And
what's your other side saying though? Because, you know,
Cucurella,
Lewis Hall is your best left back now, right?
Yeah, I mean, and he's a midfielder. Do you know what I mean? Cucurella had a really hit and miss performance. I mean, first half he was okay, but then second half against Manchester City, he just got destroyed. You know, he was being dribbled past consistently going forward. And this is my kind of worry about this move a little bit, is that if we are to bring in Juranovic, and you're saying, you know, going forward, that's not his expertise. Maybe you tuck him in maybe as an inverted player. He's maybe better for the build up, and you try and balance out on the other side with someone really expansive and holding the width and getting really far forward. Cucurella has not been great going forward this season. To be honest, I've been really disappointed with his crossing, with his overlapping runs, his underlapping runs. He doesn't seem very assertive going up front and going into those higher positions. He doesn't seem to really know what his role is, which is surprising, because I thought at Brighton, he didn't get goals, but he just looked like a really complete left back. He looked just, you know, he's player of the year. Yeah. So, I mean, what have you made of Cucurella before we come to a close? Because it's actually a really interesting conversation on him. He cost 62.5 million. There's a big debate on him and whether he was worth it. You know, could Chelsea have stuck with Ian Maatson, who's on loan at companies Burnley and playing very well, scored a cracker of a goal recently. What do you make of the Cucurella talk at the moment, especially when he's under his manager, his guy?
Well, firstly, I did a video on who Celtic should buy about 2 years ago on my YouTube channel, and I never upload anymore. And Ian Maatson was one of the guys I was like, I think we could get him on the cheap. I think he'll be overlooked by Chelsea. It's kind of proved to be the case, and it's really disappointing because he had a great season on loan at Coventry, right? If memory serves me correctly. Yeah, and he's looking banging again in the Championship. I wasn't a fan of the Cucurella deal at all, but at the same time, I was a fan of the player. I think he's being judged now as a £60 million player, and I don't think he's ever looked like that. He looked like a very solid system player in a very well-defined system at Brighton, right? And you already had, I mean, we're in a situation now where Lewis Hall is going to be seriously considered moving forward as a starting option because of the injection of energy he brought in the second half against City. Chilwell, I don't know when he's slated to return. But if you go to a back four, you might be in a situation where Cucurella, sees some bench time in the latter part of the season. Again, I don't know when Chilwell returns, but when he does, Chilwell's better in a back four. Cucurella is sort of, he's done well, hasn't he, on the left of a 3 at times, but you've kind of strayed away from that system. So yeah, there's more pressure on him and less of a sort of obvious starting berth at the minute. I think, listen, he's solid. He's solid, but
he's a good player. But I guess for me, it's a weird one, isn't it? It's like, is he going to live up to the price tag? Maybe, probably not. But
yeah,
I think it all depends on his potential and his development going forward. I think at the moment, defensively, he's having moments where he's really bad, and then he's having moments where he's actually pretty solid. But going forward, he's really got to make that jump up to be a lot more. Because fullbacks at the moment are key. They're critical in the game. They can do so much. They can tuck into midfield, like we said. They can do so many things. They're almost creative outlets in teams of these days. And I think he's got to take a lot more responsibility in his team if he's gonna meet that price point. But
I've liked him for a really long time, even when he was at Eibar and he was sort of overlooked as was he a Barcelona youth product?
Yeah, I think he was. Yeah.
So he kind of caught the eye, in the lower echelons of Spanish football when I was a little bit more prominent on Euro Football Daily. So I've liked him for a long time, but I've never watched him and thought you're truly elite. I've just thought you're a complete fullback. You're a complete fullback, but maybe like at a Europa League club. But I hope he proves me wrong. Because like you said, I feel like to justify your position as a fullback now in the top 4 team, you need to be exceptional at something.
Yeah.
Whereas he's just like pretty good at everything, but not going for the best time of it now.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's been a pleasure, Chris, honestly, getting your thoughts on this player, because he kind of snuck under the radar prior to the World Cup, and now he's kind of come to light, and it's going to be interesting to see if Chelsea or any other club, obviously Tottenham have been going for this position as well in the transfer market. It'll be interesting to see if anybody does go in for him and tries to maybe take that calculated risk, as we said. Please do let the people know where to find you. I'm sure they already know, but just in case they don't, because it's been a great episode. Thank you.
Well, like I said, obviously not my YouTube channel, because I upload about once a year at the moment. So just head on over to Football Daily, Euro Football Daily, on loads of platforms, just wherever you can find us. Always welcome.
And on Sky, because he's smashing it over there as well. Do you know what I mean? It's been a madness, him and Sam and all of the debates, and Joe as well, and all the gang. So big up to everybody over there. And yeah, guys, make sure you subscribe. Like I said, the links will be in the description. For me, smash up the likes. Let me know in the comments down below whether or not you're, after hearing this, are you keen on getting Juranovic? Are you keen on putting in that bid for him? Because obviously we know that we need a right back, at least some sort of successor to Aspilicueta and a strong deputy to Reece James. Get your thoughts in the comments, or if there's any other right back out there that we haven't discussed, obviously on the channel, that I should be looking at as well. So until the next time, big up everybody inside, and see you guys in a bit. Peace.